Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee, and I am here to wish you a very happy Morrissey Monday. A couple days late this week, but nevertheless, this is my weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths. And in this week's episode, we're going to go all the way back to the very beginning, or at least as far as the records are concerned, as I want to talk to you a little bit today about the 1984 self-titled debut album by the greatest band of all time, the Smiths. Now, the Smiths formed in 1982 in Manchester, England. The band released their first single, Hand in Glove, in May of 1983. But it wasn't until September of that year that the band entered the studio to begin work on their first full-length album. And in just under 3 months, the band emerged from the studio having accomplished what I believe is the greatest debut album of all time, or at least my favorite of all time. Admittedly, I haven't heard every debut album by every band ever, but in my opinion, this is the greatest debut album of all time. Now, in my opinion, this isn't necessarily the greatest album by the Smiths. I do tend to think that the band just kind of got better and better and better as time goes on. Of the 4 studio albums by the band, the 4 official studio albums, I would say that the self-titled debut album is probably my least favorite of the 4. Although when I did my Morrissey ranking on my first ever Morrissey Monday video, all 4 of the Smiths studio records are in my top 10 all-time Morrissey albums. So I wouldn't say that this is necessarily their best album, but I do think that the songwriting and the execution on this album is absolutely incredible. And also, I think the band on this record, they really show the potential of what they were going to become, which is the greatest band of all time. Now, for me, if you break the Smiths down into their 4 individual pieces, beginning with Johnny Marr, who, in my opinion, is one of the most unique and greatest guitar players of all time. Now, like I've said before on these videos, sometimes you get these like classic rock dads and stuff who sort of dismissively snicker at you if you suggest that somebody like Johnny Marr is the greatest guitar player of all time. But I genuinely believe that he is the most unique and best guitar player of all time. Added to that, you have Mike Joyce, who is a very soulful, accomplished, technically efficient bass player. A lot of groove in his playing. And then added with that, you have Mike Joyce, who was just a very clean, utilitarian sort of punk rock drummer. They combined to create what I believe is one of the best and certainly one of the most underrated rhythm sections in the history of rock and roll. I love what Mike Joyce has said about the rhythm section of the Smiths, saying that they were half punk and half funk. And I think that is probably one of the most apt descriptions I've ever heard of the Smiths rhythm section. And then, as if all of that wasn't going to make things great enough, the final piece of the puzzle is you add the big guy, Stephen Patrick Morrissey, who, in my opinion, is without question the greatest singer and songwriter in the history of rock and roll. To me, it is completely unnegotiable. And to me, you add all 4 of those pieces together, and really it's no mystery as to how this band became, in my opinion, the greatest band of all time. To me, there has never been a band that ever sounded like the Smiths. Now, there have been a lot of bands who have sort of imitated, the saying, imitated, never duplicated. And I think that is actually sort of a compliment to the band. I don't really, as a fan, I don't tend to get super offended when I hear other people trying to sort of duplicate what the Smiths did. Without question, I think they are probably the single most influential British band from the 1980s. And like I said, to me, they are just simply the greatest band of all time. And for me, there's just never been an artist who I ever related to in the same way that I ever related to Morrissey, not only with his singing, but of course his songwriting. There's never been anybody's lyrics who have touched me the way that Morrissey's lyrics have touched me, in both an emotional way, in an intellectual way. He's somebody that, to me, his lyrics evoke joy and laughter and pain and sorrow at the same time. And there's just never been anybody who I could ever relate to as a musician in the fashion that I relate to Morrissey. And I think the greatest gift that this band has going for it, or its greatest attribute going for it, is the songwriting duo of Johnny Marr and Morrissey, because nobody ever wrote music like Johnny Marr. Like I said, I believe he is probably one of the most unique guitar players of all time. I believe that he has one of the most unique ears for music that I've ever heard. And even now, the stuff that he is producing now, his solo records, are absolutely incredible. Just nobody sounds like Johnny Marr musically. And sometimes I wish I could get inside of his brain and kind of crawl around and just hear music the way that he does, because I genuinely believe that nobody has ever written music like he does. And then you add on top of that the lyricism, the wit, and the cunning of Morrissey. You have just, in my opinion, the greatest songwriting duo in the history of rock and roll. When I talk about the Smiths and Morrissey, it probably gets repetitive when I say greatest of all time, but that's just the facts. I'm sorry. But it is true, and I would put the songwriting combination of Morrissey and Marr up against any of the iconic duos that you ever hear people talk about. And I am including Lennon-McCartney, Palmer and Plant and Page, Jagger, Hendrix. I would put Morrissey and Marr above all of them as the greatest duo in the history of rock and roll. And again, I know sometimes that people will dismiss things like that and snicker when you compare bands like the Smiths to the almighty Beatles or any of those. I made a comment on my Echo and the Bunnymen video recently where I said that Echo and the Bunnymen were the greatest band ever to come out of Liverpool, and I stand by it. I really don't care what all you Beatles files say. Not that I have anything against the Beatles, I certainly don't. But the Smiths are just a lot better. Anyway, this album was released on February 20th, 1984. It is produced by John Porter. And like I said, I really love this album a lot. Like I said, I don't believe that this is the band's greatest work, but I do believe that this showed the potential of where this band was headed. And I really love the production on this record. I really love that you can hear all the individual pieces. I really love Morrissey's voice. It's funny when you go back and listen to this record, which I still do very often. It's funny to me just how young Morrissey sounds on this record, and how sort of, I don't want to say undeveloped, but just the where his voice is at that point in his career, and he just literally sounds like a little kid. I really love this record. I love the production on this album. And again, I would not say that this is the Smiths' greatest album, but man, this really shows where this band was going. I just really, really love this record. And of course, the first thing you notice about the record when you get it is, of course, just the striking artwork. That's one thing that the Smiths were just absolute masters of, is album artwork. They had a style that was all their own. It was very striking. It was very timeless. And this is probably, of the four official studio albums of the Smiths, this is probably my favorite sleeve Although, man, they're all good. But this one is probably my favorite, of course, as all Smiths fans know, and probably most music fans know. This cover was designed by Morrissey, and the model is, of course, Joe D'Alessandro. I'm never sure if I pronounced that right. D'Alessandro. And this was a still taken from the 1968 Andy Warhol movie called Flesh. I absolutely love this cover. When you see it, it just really grabs you. I even love the sort of subtlety of the font up in the corner. Like I said, the Smiths were just absolute masters at packaging and artwork. And I think this is probably my favorite of the album covers. Anyway, this record, let's get into the record a little bit. This album, as I said, came out in February of 1984. This is the greatest debut album of all time. I stand by that. You can't prove to me that I'm wrong, at least. The album begins with a song called Reel Around the Fountain. I absolutely love this song. It's a little down-tempo. It's a little slow. My only real nitpick about this song isn't the song itself, because I absolutely love Reel Around the Fountain. It is just an amazing song. My only slight sort of nitpick is I don't love that it's the first song on the album. I think you could have picked a better song to kick off the album. In fact, I think if you would have switched the running order between Reel Around the Fountain, which was the first song, and the next song, You've Got Everything Now, you switch the order of those two songs. I think it's a much better start to the record. But I absolutely love Reel Around the Fountain as a song. As I mentioned, the second song is You've Got Everything Now. This song is much more up-tempo. I would have liked this song to be more the start of the album. Again, I just didn't really love Reel Around the Fountain as the opening track. I really love You've Got Everything Now. I love the guitar playing. Of course, I love the lyrics. I love Morrissey's voice. And one thing I will say about, I mentioned the guitar playing, one thing I will mention about this entire album all the way through is I think that this record actually has some of Johnny Marr's most interesting guitar work, some of his most sort of non-traditional sort of guitar riffs and intros. But I really love the guitar work on this song. I love the guitar work on the entire album. I mean, you're talking about the greatest guitar player of all time. It's not too hard to throw some compliments his way. The third song on this record is Miserable Lie, and I like the first half of this song a lot. I do have to say, in all honesty, this is probably my least favorite song on the record. Not that I don't like the song. Like I said, the first half of the song I really like a lot. But towards the second half of the song, as most of you who are Morrissey or Smiths fans know, Morrissey goes into these just insane, falsetto gymnastics that just kind of grate a little bit. Kind of makes your teeth want to fall out a little bit. And again, not that it's a bad song, but I always say that with that vocal performance that Morrissey does towards the second half of Miserable Lie, if you don't like Morrissey's voice as it is, that is probably not the song for you. Again, I don't hate that song. It's just that falsetto, kind of spastic performance, just kind of hurts your spine a little bit. But probably my least favorite song on the record. I mean, there's not really a lot you can say bad about this record. So I would say that the second half of Miserable Lie is probably as close as you're going to get to real, deep criticism, at least from me. The fourth song on this record is Pretty Girls Make Graves. I absolutely love this song. I love the sort of jaunty instrumentation. I love Morrissey's performance on this song. I love the lyrics. And this is such a great upgrade over Miserable Lie. This is actually one of the better songs on the record. And I do remember at one point there was a band called Pretty Girls Make Graves. I don't know that I ever actually listened to them. But anyway, I really love this song. I love the lyrics, and I just love the instrumentation. I love how it's very sort of like jaunty and swingy. And again, I haven't mentioned it yet on this as far as talking track to track, but I really love the rhythm section on Pretty Girls Make Graves. I love the bass playing. And again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I really love the production on this record because you can hear all 4 individual pieces together. When you hear them all, you can hear them very clearly, separately, but it just gels together just beautifully. I love this record. God dang it. The next song is The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Again, I really love this song. Sort of a down-tempo, melancholic song. I really love the instrumentation. I really love Morrissey's vocals on this song. Just all around, you can't really complain about The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I don't think. I like the little like guitar. I like how it kind of just like drops in. Great song. The next song is Still Ill. I love the introduction to this song. I love the pounding drums. I really love Mike Joyce's playing on this song. I love the rhythm section on this song. I like how the guitar kind of like drops in behind the drums. And then, of course, Morrissey's voice is just flawless on this record. Again, he sounds like he's about 16 years old. But I absolutely love the lyrics in Still Ill. Just an incredible, amazing song. Love it. The next song is Hand in Glove. This was the first single by the band back in 1983. I really love this song a lot. My one tiny little snip on this song is I'm not generally a huge fan of harmonica music, just in general. But if anybody's going to do it, the Smiths do it as well as anybody. And of course, Johnny Marr's harmonica playing is really good, actually. And I just love the instrumentation on this song. I love the tempo. I love Morrissey's sort of like soaring vocals on this song. I love Hand in Glove. Just a great song. Again, there's really like not much bad on this album. So to say that this is the weakest of the Smiths' 4 official studio albums isn't a dig on this record. It's just a compliment to the ones that came after it. The next song is What Difference Does It Make? That is an iconic all-timer for the Smiths. Again, I love the intro. I love the lyrics to that song. I mean, who hasn't heard What Difference Does It Make a million times? I absolutely love that song. Again, I actually really like the video for that song also. A lot of the Smiths videos around that time were sort of similar to each other, but I actually really liked the video to that song. The next song is I Don't Owe You Anything. Man, I really love the little intro to this song. I love how Morrissey's voice just kind of like comes in and sits on top of it. I really like the tempo to this song. This is, to me, is kind of a very underrated Smiths song. I don't know if you would say that I Don't Owe You Anything is a deep cut in the Smiths or Morrissey catalog. But I do think that it is a very underrated song. One of the better songs on this record, actually. One of my favorite songs on the record. Again, apart from Miserable Lie, I don't really think there's anything you can really complain about too much on this album. But I love I Don't Owe You Anything. One of my favorite songs on this record. And the album ends, of course, with probably the darkest song on the record. Arguably one of the darkest songs in the entire Smiths catalog, at least in my opinion. Suffer Little Children. Of course, this song was written about the Moors murders in England. And this song is a heartbreaker, but it is absolutely beautiful. I love the instrumentation. I love the little guitar intro at the very beginning. And I think vocally speaking, this is Morrissey's best performance on the record. I mean, this song is absolutely gut-wrenching. This thing turns you inside out, upside down, and over. But it is a beautiful song. Again, such a tragic, horrific story. But it inspired at least a great song. I know that sounds really ridiculous just because of the 5 children that were killed. But I love the song Suffer Little Children. Now, of course, it is not included on the original pressing, but one of the songs that would come out on later pressings after the original, of course, was the song This Charming Man, which I do want to pay a little bit of homage to. Of course, it wasn't on the original, but I actually really love the song This Charming Man. Also, I think that is one of the songs most associated with this era of the Smiths. Of course, it has an amazing music video. Arguably one of the better songs from the Smiths of this era. It's a song doesn't matter how many times you hear it, you never get tired of it. I absolutely love the song This Charming Man. I remember one time somebody asked me, I was talking about this record, and they were like, well, you kind of forgot like the biggest one, didn't you? Assuming that I had overlooked This Charming Man. Of course, it was not on the original pressing of this record, but it is a great song. I love the video, and it's one of those songs no matter how many times I hear it, no matter how many times it comes on in my car, I love that song. That's never a skipper. Really, there aren't many skippers on this song at all, except for maybe the second half of Miserable Lie, because if driving and I hear that song, that song can be seizure inducing. And I don't mind if I take myself out, but I don't want to take anybody else out as an innocent bystander. Anyway, man, that is a little bit of a look at the 1984 self-titled debut album by the greatest band of all time, the Smiths. I do want to apologize on the tardiness of this week's Morrissey Monday, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you did, be sure to check back every week for Morrissey Monday, my weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths. Be sure to go out and support your local record store. Listen to the Smiths' 1984 debut album. If you haven't revisited it in a while, I would highly recommend it. Feel free to leave comments in the comments section. People don't usually comment on these videos, which is fine. But if you have an opinion one way or the other about this record, or what's your favorite song, or anything like that, feel free to drop a comment in the section below. Stay tuned to this channel also for other record content throughout the week. And really, again, thank you so much for watching these videos. I really do appreciate it. And I will talk to you next time.